Okay, good morning, everyone. I want to start by thanking everyone for taking their time out of their busy schedule to be on our webinar today. And today, I'm going to be covering the reading of the analysis. As I said in the email, one of the big critical things for agents is to have a confidence in being able to explain really how IBC works and the concepts, and then illustrated through the analysis that we do with their numbers, where there's a lot of programs out there today that give you the ability to illustrate, if you will, the concept, but where most of the programs leave off in illustrating concepts or explaining concepts, myDREAMware picks up. And we have had some phenomenal success. So when you see some of these things, we ran one for a gal. All she had was $10,000 in her savings account. She wanted to start that, but we wanted to make sure that there was no additional costs out of pocket for her. And so ended up, we didn't have to do any adjustments. Well, there was enough money as cash flow and paying off debt. And in 8 years, she managed to become debt-free. So that was very exciting, and she was very excited about seeing that was a possibility for her. Mike has stories of sitting down with people, and he does this. He goes through a kind of a scenario and figures out kind of what optimum policy sizes are for somebody, and then he comes back and he will sit down with someone or do a webinar, and when he does, he's had people really break down in tears when they've seen the power of this and the freeing, what it does to free people up from being under the thumb or fearful that something's going to happen and all of a sudden you lose everything. And by being able to control all of the situations, your finances and basically your economy, then you get it's powerful and it sets people free. And we know that the borrower is a slave to the lender, and so with this system you can move them out of that equation so that they can now breathe easier. They don't have to worry about if something happens, we're going to lose our house, we're going to lose our car, whatever it is the situation is. So that's really, we're not selling life insurance in this situation. I mean, you are, because that's the financial vehicle that works so well here. But what you're doing is really you're becoming a financial coach. We're using PUAR-based whole life insurance to get them down the road to where they want to be financially, both getting out of debt as well as building a system up to the point where they will have a very, very, very good retirement, as well as passing on and leaving a legacy to what? Their children and to their children's children. So today I'm going to cover the reading of the analysis. So what we have here, let me just start with we'll just go up to the top and start with this. The top of the analysis is the head of household, and so it has the primary information here. There is a place to put an email in here. You want that. You want to make sure you get an email eventually from them, so that when you create the policy manager, you'll have an email address that can go to them. When you upload documents, let's say you run an analysis and then you run the illustration, you can upload both of those right into a specially designed folder that has it's just for this client. And so you can send off an email. I'm not going to go through, I've been through that in other stuff, but you can send off an email to them notifying them, and they have a link, and they'll come back in and they can open up any document that you send to them, and that's all done within the analysis. We calculate the age every time this form is opened. So we're not storing age anywhere on the database. We do store the date of birth, but we don't store the age, and then we recalculate the age every time you open this up. When you open up the form or load in this analysis, one of the things we do is we check to see how many months it's been since you ran an analysis. And so let's say you work with a client and 6 months later you've had the opportunity to get back to them, or they've inquired about something, and then you say, all right, let's go run that. What it'll do is, because 6 months, there's been some debt that's paid down, right? So instead of having to go back and get those numbers from your client, it will actually sequence through. It'll warn you saying it's been 6 months since we ran this, and then it will start calculating through the amortization tables those new numbers and put those into the outstanding balances. So here we have the monthly income and additional income. This is the only place this is used is in calculating what your headwind is. So it figures out what the next number is in interest is being paid next month for all of the debts that are being sequenced. Then it gives you that ratio. Then if there's any life insurance that's existing, and we only have one policy here, so you may need to combine a bunch of them, but it gives you an idea that they have something and you may replace it. So if you replace, what it's going to do is it's going to take the cash values, it's going to put that in the front loading in the assets column. It's going to take this 1644 or the 137 and put that into the assets, and gives you the ability to basically redirect that monthly amount into policy loan repayment as additional funds. Next, we have their spouse and a little bit of information about them. So it's not a lot, but it's some. Next, we do have what you do is when you come in, you're going to have, this is going to be basically empty, and you'll have no policies in here. This is already filled out, obviously, and then you'll figure out or use the AAS or the, I'm in the beta right now because I want to show you some new stuff we just did, but the auto sequencing will take from the smallest debt amount to the largest. I spent the better part of a day running some various algorithms to see if there was any scenario where either ratio to the amount that was left versus the amount that was being paid, all those types of things, run them through a number of algorithms, and found out that in fact the smallest amount due, outstanding balance, to the largest was in fact the best way to do that. Now there is, on occasion, there may be a time when you've got a bunch of assets to liquidate, and for instance maybe the charger, because it has a $760 payment, if you could pay this off, it would be more than paying off the Kia, maybe a couple of small credit cards. So there are some times when you might change that around, but other than having a bunch of assets to liquidate to start with, the sequence that the system comes up with is probably going to be your best bet. Now in the long run, 8, 10, 12, 15 years down the road, it's probably not going to be a big deal one way or the other. It's just when you start, it's kind of like the losing weight. If you can lose a few pounds the first week, you'll be encouraged to stay with the program. This is not any different than that. If you can see that you got something paid off early on or immediately, then you're going to have more confidence in the program and stay with it longer term. So that's really the goal, is to stay on this. Nelson talks about it being long term. This is not overnight. It takes years. Now obviously it's a lot better than when he was doing this 15, 20 years ago, when it took 7, 8 years to build up enough cash to start paying down debt. Now we can start that off right away. And so there are, figured out a few things, and we're continuing to figure out best scenarios, policy sizes, optimizing, staging, all that stuff. So in here, the top line here, current totals, gives you the total assets, total debts, and I think I have, let's see here. See if that totaled that for me. Now I'll have to go in here. I think I may have to run something in the assets. Let's see if that's, I don't know why that's not totaling. There we go. Total debts, and so we come back over the policies and it'll be there. I think before it runs, it actually does one more check to make sure that number's in there. So You have total debts, and then the underwriter's withholding rate, and this is, it defaults to 6%. You can change it, but I think there's limitations. You can't, I don't think you can drop it below 5, and I don't think you can set it above 12. In the U.S., it defaults to 6. For our Canadian friends, it's 10. So that's the basic setup here for the policies. You can do up to 4 policies in the analysis. I'm going to do 2. I'm going to have PUAR through 4, $10,000, and this is a pretty stiff ratio with a 75% to 25%. And then in year 4, I started another one from basically the PUAR that drops after 4 years. So, and then I have this seasoned 1 year. So when you come down to the bottom, you can see premiums $10,000 out for 7 years, and then when the second policy drops, it drops to $43.75. So I'm not going to go through each of the mortgages and all the debts. Let's quickly look at the assets. There is front loading of $30,000 because we had a policy where we were going to replace. You can put in here whatever, you can transfer the whole thing, 1035, that exchange, or any part of it. So you have that. We liquidated $5,000 in stocks. We also liquidated $5,000 in a quality plan, and it calculates the penalties and what needs to be reserved for taxes. Now on the right side, you see the monthly contribution. We can use a couple of these, and when there's strategies of when to do, like the monthly contribution. There's a lot of people have some pushback on redirecting that 525 that's going into a qualified plan that has quote unquote a match to it in a lot of companies, but the limitations on the matches are not near what they were when they started out in the 80s. It used to be that they matched you dollar for dollar really as much as you wanted to put in. That's not the case today, and a lot of times in 3 to 6 months you've hit some kind of ceiling that the company is willing to match you on. And so as we continue to build out the system, eventually we'll have a comparison with the matches and being able to calculate what is costing you in management fees, and show you the difference in taxations down the road. But that's not one of our top priorities now, but eventually we'll have those types of calculations being done so you can illustrate. The best thing to do is run this, and then if your client gives you some pushback, come back and just uncheck that box. It will take that calculation out and rerun it, and invariably they'll see that the system will outperform the growth rate of their existing qualified plans, and the risk factors decrease significantly. So that's one way to do it, is to go ahead and plug that in, and then if there's some pushback on it, then you can run it the other way and show them what the difference is. Now, if you're not licensed Series 6 and 7 and can give financial advice, you cannot tell them what to do when it comes to liquidating assets that are from an investment vehicle. So you have to be very careful with that, and I'll cover that in the game plan. So here we are. See, additional funds. I'm not going to use anything here. Well, let's just do $12, so it's a nice even $450. On the right side, we've liquidated $10,000. First year premiums are $10,000. Actually, next year's premiums are $10,000, and then also there is we're not setting anything aside for future premiums, and at this point there's no additional funds to pay down debt. However, because we have front-loaded about $8,000 into the policy, all total, we're going to have $18,800 available for paying down debt to start with when we pull the loan from the policy before the next anniversary date. So that'll get us started. So now let's just simply go down to the run section. Here we see the premium due is 10. Our run method, there's 3 methods. There is use all available cash values to pay premiums. There is you can run each year one at a time, or you can do all new money. For people that are trying to find the most economical, the most use of their cash for cash flow, and let the system pay for itself, use all cash values available to pay premiums is the best. If you have someone who's trying to put a lot of money into the system, all new money for premiums is obviously the other extreme. And then if you need to, you can run this 1 year at a time and alter. Maybe you know they're going to get a big bonus next year, so you could go in and put in that they're going to do run this, and they're going to have next year they're going to have a significant bonus that they're going to put in, and so there would be some new money in, and so you can run that 1 year at a time. You can also, one of the things you can do is as they build up assets and you know they're going to need cash out of say out of a HELOC to pay premiums in year 2 or 3 perhaps, you can do 1 year at a time, and in there's a place that says borrow to pay premiums, and then whatever was in the new money, that will be taken out of some place that they're borrowing it. And what we're going to do is we're going to deduct that from the amount that's going to be available to pay down debt, and then essentially what you do is you borrow it out, take the loan, pay the premiums, take the loan out immediately, put that money back in the asset that you just borrowed from. And so there's no cost to that, but their premiums do make sure they get paid, and there's no additional funds out of pocket. So it just decreases the amount of money available to pay down debt. So let's go ahead and run. Oh, the other one is the miscellaneous account. The miscellaneous account is basically it's a fictitious account, if you will. It's an account that once you borrow, let's say you borrow $10,000 out of the policy, and you now have a headwind that's been turned into a tailwind of $2,000 a month. In 5 months, you have paid the policy back in full. And so you still have 7 months of $2,000 each. Now you could take another loan out. In our system, for worst case scenario is that you only take out a loan once a year. Now we know in real life you can take one out as soon as the policy is back in full, or even before if you wanted to utilize the funds for something. But being able to say we're only doing this once a year means that it's worst case scenario, because if you were to use that money ahead of time before the year and you could still leave enough in to pay premiums if that's what you wanted, then it would outperform what our analysis is showing. So there's a miscellaneous account. Whatever you do with that extra $2,000 a month that you're paying for the last 7 months because your policy was in full, it's just a miscellaneous account. That's how we account for it. It could be that you put it in a special savings account or set it aside, put it in a cookie jar, bury it in a tin can in the backyard, whatever you do, just don't spend it. The system is going to utilize that, and so it's important for both you and your client to know that when you've paid the policy back in full, that there's some things you can do, but the headwind or the tailwind that you now created needs to stay a tailwind. Otherwise, you lose some of that momentum, and that $2,000 a month is some pretty good momentum you don't want to lose. So you could put that aside, and then it will stack up, and I'm not sure if this example shows the miscellaneous account accruing or not, but if it does, what happens is we say let's use it for premiums, and then if there's anything left over, so let's say there's $15,000 in the miscellaneous account, it's a $10,000 annual premium, and we'll take $10,000 out of the miscellaneous account, pay the premiums. That leaves you $5,000 that you could use for paying down debt. So you take out the loan out of the policy, you have the $5,000 from the miscellaneous account, it gives you probably around $11,000, $12,000, $13,000 to use for paying down debt in the next year. You can let it just accumulate, so we can show basically that accumulating, or you can designate it not to pay premiums, but that it's for debt only. So typically it defaults to use for premiums and then debt. That's what we recommend. So let's run the analysis. And voila. as Mike says, fasten your seatbelt. And for those of you who have not seen this in a while, he also talks about having a paper bag in case you hyperventilate when you see these numbers. So here we are. The first line is interest to income ratio. In this case, it's 23.65%. This $1,052 is what you would take all of the 4 loans that are out. We go and see how much interest is going to be paid to somebody else next month, and it ends up totaling $1,052 for an income of $44.50. That means 23, almost 24 cents out of every dollar you make goes to someone else. That's your headwind. Next, we have calculated out what the available financial resources to start with are. In this case, it's 516. That number is derived from 828, which is the home value plus other financial assets, and subtracting out 311,986 or 906 gives you the 516,205. In 8 years, 96 months later, that has grown to 819,726. The way we get that is there was remaining assets after liquidations of 814,492. We would have, if the loans were all paid back, you'll have cash values of $100,053. You add those two together, and then we start adjusting it. If there was money in the miscellaneous account, that would be added in here. In this case, there is an outstanding policy loan balance of $70,000, so we subtract that, and there's still $24,178 left in outstanding debt balances. So when you get done adding these two together and subtracting out these two, you end up with $819,726. So we clearly delineate that starting, ending in 8 years. Now what that did was it increased their net worth by 59%. We've seen this sometimes well over 100%, and depending on where they're at, and if someone's ratio is really small, you could see this as a number that's actually smaller, or they could be actually upside down when it comes to how much they owe versus what their assets are. And so if this is really small, let's say that was 81,000 instead of 516, that'd be a 1,000% gain. So you could see some numbers get pretty big. The annual growth rate is 6%, and that's a compounding number. So we go back and calculate and figure out if you were going to invest, you would have to match that kind of growth in 401k or your IRAs or mutual funds or whatever to get up to 819 at the current rate. And actually, it may even be there could be even advantages of the fact that you're not going to get taxed on this. There's it's all kinds of, anyway, there's all kinds of advantages that aren't calculated in here. The remaining assets, we say that grows at a 0% rate. Now, obviously, this could grow, especially if it's a house growing at about 2 or 3% a year. That could be substantial, and so it could be a lot more than that. But we're trying to be conservative, because what we want is to give you a system that when you sit down with your client, that when you go through this, it's worst case scenario. So, nobody minds spending $5,000 if they get $5,025 worth of value. What we're upset with is that I got $4,990 worth of value. I feel like I was completely cheated. Now, it's only $10, but there's something in the human mind that says, I didn't get everything I paid for. So when you're working with someone long term, we want to do everything we can to make sure that when you run an analysis, it is worst case scenario, that it's conservative, so that every year as we develop this out and we start showing people, here's where you were, here's where you would have been if you had not used this concept, and here's where you are now by using it, that it outperforms what we had estimated they would be at. And so you're building trust. It's long term. We don't ever want to do anything that destroys that trust. These are people who are writing you checks for thousands of dollars, if not tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars for premiums. So that's why we've designed the system so it's basically worst case scenario and conservative. Next, total outlay for policy premiums over 8 years, $10,000. That $10,000 came from assets and there was no additional funds needed. Total liquidated assets for reduction, 0. Remember our premium was $10,000, we liquidated $10,000, that was an offset. If we'd liquidated $15,000, there'd be now $5,000 available to be used for debt reduction. Penalties for liquidating assets, $806. Taxes needed to be set aside for liquidating assets, roughly $28.13, and I think we had that set at a 28% tax bracket. So you can do that calculation, and they set that aside. Again, if it's only $2,500, you're a hero. But if it's $2,900, your name's mud. Again, we want to make sure that you have this realistically set high enough that they're not going to get burned. In 96 months, your prioritized debt to outside financial institutions has been reduced from $311,906 to just $24,178. Had they have done nothing, it would still be $161,732. And this is probably a low number, because realistically, if they have any credit cards, when do we pay credit cards off? Never, right? We actually, in our calculations, we actually amortize credit cards and say you quit using them, and so those numbers are going to come down, where realistically they're probably not. So this number in real life would probably even be higher than that in 8 years. Okay, so moving from 311 down to 24, or they would have still been at 161. That's a huge difference, especially when the only cost to them was $10,000 to get the program started or fund the first year premiums. Next, we show that of this $24,000, the current debt that the system was working on was the primary residence, and it was down to the $24,178, and I'll show you that in a moment. Next, we saved them a total of $56,411 in interest over 96 months. Now, if you pay off a $200,000 house, day 2, you will have saved yourself, if it was a 6% loan, you will have saved yourself $230,000 of interest. But you would take 30 years to realize all $230,000 of that interest. In our case, we take and figure out what interest you will actually save through the acceleration of these debt paydowns in 96 months. And then we add that up, and all total, $56,000 of interest. This interest is part of that. If you've got $10,000 annual premiums, that's 5.5 years of premiums being paid by what? The interest that would have been going to someone else. By the time you get to the end of the 96 months, we've recovered and redirected $2,451 that's going back into the policy and building your wealth. So let's go down now. This is a summation. So when you sit with a client, you're going to go through this, and then as they ask questions or they want to know more about what does that look like, down below here, we start with showing you the debts, how much there was, and then the sequence they get paid off. We have 8 years now up here at the top in the navigation. Each one of these year by year takes you to those years. All right? So you can do it there. We also give you those buttons down here that shows, so you don't have to go back up in here, and so you're already here. Go ahead and click that. Now, if this dashed line, there's a table that's hidden, and that is the month-by-month cash flow. And you can expand any individual year, so let's just go to 4, and we'll expand year 4. Now you see the table here that pops up. If you want to collapse that so it's not viewable, then you do that, and then it just stays with the summation for the year. Let's go back up to 1. Now, if you like seeing those and you like going through them, now you be careful. You could overwhelm a client. We call it fire hosing someone with too much information. You can expand all of these at one time, and all 8 years show that table. So let's go through this. We have the start of year 1. Because we're past the 15th of the month, we actually start the system next month. All right, so policy cash values, there's $24.69 in the policy. The company will withhold 6%. We take that out minus $14.81, leaves you $23,209 available to pay debt. Now these have to be adjusted. We didn't have any liquidated assets, so we add 0. There was an existing loan of $46.90 from the season policy, so you subtract that out, and it leaves us with $18,519 to start with. Now the order of sequence of payoff of the debts was up here. Okay, so we had $7,500, $82.55. So we have $7,500, and it's paid off, so it's gone. We calculate the savings by paying that off month 1 of $1,737, which is what would have been paid over the course of the next 96 months had you have not paid that off. Now again, credit cards, it would probably even be higher than that, but again, conservative. The Kia Soul was next, $82.55. It's gone. The interest we saved on it was $117. Now interestingly enough, credit cards, they're designed to never pay off, and you pay tons of interest. While cars, there is some interest on it. You don't save near as much in interest as you do in the for the credit cards. Student loan. Okay, so we had $7,500, $82.55. That left us $27.64. So when you add this, $27.64, $82.55, and $7,500, that will total up to $18,519. Okay. So we take that remainder, the $27.64, put that towards the student loan. That brings the student loan balance down to $15,275. All total, the debt was reduced by $18,519. Now this is if you leave money in the policy because everything gets paid off, then we go through a sequence of showing what was left in the policy, crediting back part of this 6% or all of it, and showing you then what the new balance is. Beginning policy, we had $956. I'm sorry, when we did this, we had $4-something in additional $450 in additional finances to be used or funds to be used in the assets section, and then we paid off the B of A, so there's $184 we add to that. We add in another $322 by paying off the Kia Soul, and that gets redirected. So all total, you now have $956 a month coming back into the policy. You also had $137 from the life insurance, $100 from the savings, $100 from stocks, $12 I added in to make that nice and even, and they were overpaying their credit cards by $101. So all of that total up gives you the $956. Again, you can follow all these numbers if you want to get a calculator out and add these up. These are the numbers that it ends up totaling. Next, we have the blue table here with the starting period, the payment amount. If there's a I think this starts over new every year. Actually, no, it doesn't. It starts, it totals. So we bring that down so you can see total paid into the system, running totals month by month, clear out 8 years. We show you the total paid in principal. There is no calculation for interest at this point, and eventually we may put in that if you get credited as you pay these, make these payments, there could be some money credited back into the policy loan because you're paying that off. Now, we've already pulled out and withheld 6%. Most of these companies right now are around 5 or 5.25. But again, for worst case scenario, we are doing a worst case scenario. We're not crediting back anything. So when it comes to the end, instead of having 13,218 due, it would probably be a little less than that. Again, we haven't done a lot of this. So that's how that works, is so that it, again, worst case scenario, so we're not crediting anything back. Here's a miscellaneous account. Had this paid off in full in any month, then the rest of the balance of what was being paid in, the $956, would have come over to the miscellaneous account, and that would have been accruing. Next, year 2. $37,924 would be available. You can find that number. Let's go back up to the input section and go to policies. Here's the 90. We have the 37,924 here. Also, you can see it right here, 37,924. So 37,924, 6%, 35,649. Next, the previous year ending balance, we need to subtract that out because 37 would be if everything was paid back, but it wasn't. So we had 13,218 we have to subtract from our starting balance of 35,649. We also took out $10,000 to pay the policy premiums. So we take that out, and it leaves us with $12,431. Taking that, we've paid the loan. The student loan was paid down to $10,093. Out of that comes we take the $10,093 out of the $12,443. It's now gone. How much interest did we save? $1,198. We had a balance left over of $23.38 that can now be applied to the charger. And then because we did pay off the student loan, there's a 502 change from the headwind into the tailwind. So we add that to our previous amount, which was $956, and you get now $1,458. That's the payment here. So all total, when you come down, you get $1,458 going back into the policy. Here's your loan amount, and every month it gets adjusted, $1,458. So by the time you get done at the end of the year, it's down to $20,428. So that's what's going to be carried over into year 3. So let's go ahead and look at year 3. So here we have $51,000. We adjust it by this 6%, $48,000. Here was that $20,428 that we had from above, the previous year policy balance. We took out $10,000 to pay premiums, leaves us $18,000 to pay down debt. Now we pay off the charger. Now before, this was up high enough that when you're paying this off in a year, this is going to come down significantly. So if we look back at what we paid this down to, was at 22. We dropped it just to $20,308. Now, all of a sudden, 12 months later, it's down to $11,683. So let me go show you that real quick. This is the accelerated pay down. Now this is going to be, I think, is it 3 or 4? Maybe it's 4. Yeah, here's a Dodge Charger. Now if I expand this amortization table out, you can see exactly where it is, how much you're paying, how much is going towards interest, how much is going towards the pay down of the debt. And then, so that's the part up here in the blue is what they're on. Next, we have the Dodge Charger 760. We had $23.38 available, and we add that to the 760. It gives you $3,098. We figure out what the interest charge on $22,646 would be, and it's $56. We take the balance of that, apply that, and next thing you know, it's down to $19,604. Now you apply the regular payments for the next 12 months. In 12 months, it's dropped from $19,604 down to $11,683. That's what we pay off in year 3. Whoops, 3. So that's what we pay off here in the Charger. So again, you can follow every single number. There's no flipping back and forth between spreadsheets and calculators and tables and all that stuff. Everything is right here in one place. Now, we showed up and we calculate the interest saved. We had, again, add the 11,683, the 6,413, and you've got 18,096. That's what you can pay down. So we had, after we paid off the charger, we had 6,413 left over. We put that towards the HELOC. Now the HELOC was interest only, so it never changes. 35,000, it'll be 35,000 for 10 years until it either converts or usually it converts. Right? So now it's down to 28,587. The charger, the headwind was 760. Now we add that to our previous number, and now we have 2218. So you can see how this starts amplifying as you start using your money better and better by redirecting, getting these things paid off and redirecting that back into the policy. So we have 2218. Our loan is started at 51,621, and as you go through, the Kia Soul would have paid off without doing anything in month 26. You can say in each individual debt if you want to drop that payment or not, if it's less than 96 months. So in this case, we're not dropping it. You could have scheduled it to drop, but and if you had dropped it, it would have subtracted this 322 from 2218 and given you a new number, essentially real time, to do that. But if you had 322 extra, what does Parkinson's law tell you? If your income increases or the amount of money you have available increases, your expenses typically rise to meet that income or that money you have available. So it's better just to leave it in here. If you want to, you could calculate, how much it was and set that aside in the end if you wanted to buy another car in a year or two. So when we work on the policy manager, one of the things we're going to be adding this year is going to be ability to forecast, and you'll be able to put that information in and then see what it's going to take to make sure you have enough cash or as much as you possibly can come up with to buy a new car in years in 2 or 3 years out. So those are some of the things to look forward to. I'm not going to go through every line of this. Essentially, year after year, it's essentially the same thing. Here the student loan would have paid off. Here the Dodge Charger would have paid off. And I'm not sure if we did. I don't know if I dropped anything or not. Let's see. We're at year 5. Not dropped. 6. Nothing there. 7. Now you're going to notice the policy loans keep getting bigger. And then we are down to how much? 39,000. By the time you get to the end, for the primary residence, the acceleration, by the time you get down to year 8, it's down to, we showed you in the summary, 24,178. And 21,000 was used last year. It's probably going to be pretty close to that, or maybe even a little bit more. And so there's a possibility that beginning of year 9, when they pay the premiums, which is basically, when we come back up here, that even with the second policy, it's only $4,300. So chances are it's going to be big enough to pay that off at the beginning of year 9. So let's now go up to the game plan. So in the game plan, we have an 8-year financial plan for who it is, in this case Owen Banks, the date, who prepared it, you, and your agent ID number for the carrier that you're using. We have a couple of disclaimers in here. One, all amounts are estimates based on information provided and strategy chosen by the client. They're very involved in this process. No specific results are guaranteed. Again, there's some unknown factors. One, life happens. You didn't make the payments back into the policy that you said you were at the level you said that the game plan figured out that you should be in order to make the system work. Also, that a licensed or qualified advisor should be consulted regarding any potential asset changes. Again, if you're not licensed, if you're licensed life insurance, but you're not licensed for financial advising, you cannot tell them to liquidate something. You can show them the results if they do or if they don't, but you cannot advise them to liquidate assets. We want to make sure you're protected from that because you can get in trouble. This is the game plan. The face amount, and you can put that in. It'd be good to have an accurate number there. And then what the premiums are. Here we go year by year. First we liquidated $10,000 for the first, to get the thing started, $10,000, and then every year it's $10,000, 10, 10, 10, and finally year 8 it drops because we dropped the second policy that was started. We dropped that PUAR in year 4, so we're now down to $43.75 for the 2 policies annual premiums. It shows that $10,000 is scheduled to come out of the policy cash values every year, and then of course the last year it's only $43.75. Had we been accruing money in the miscellaneous account and you designated that to pay premiums, of the $10,000, it would have taken it first from the miscellaneous account and then the balance from the cash values. Had they been, between these two, had they been short of the $10,000 and there was money that either was allocated, that would have been here and that would have been used, or if there was money out of their pocket they were going to need to come up with to make sure that premium got paid in these out years, that would show up here in red. All total, 0 was needed out of pocket, 10,000 was from liquidated. We didn't use any money from miscellaneous account because we never got a balance there. And all total, their premiums for 8 years is $74,375. $64,375 of that came from the cash values as you were paying debt and redirecting that back into the policy. All that interest that we showed you that was being saved was, what, $56,000? So essentially the interest saved on those debts was making policy premium payments for them. Next we show the face value amount that was replaced, and then if there was any money moved, that we show the cash values that was there. Next we have the loans and debts to be paid down or off in the sequence, either B of A, Kia Soul, student loan, charter, HELOC, and the primary residence. The first 2 get paid off in month 1. Now it was scheduled for 51 months. We paid it off in 1 month. The next one was scheduled to pay off in 26 months. It got paid off in month 1. The next one was 40. It got paid off in month 13. 43 got paid off in 25. 96, which actually isn't right because this was a interest only and it's going to convert, but we said 96 months. You're going to pay it off in 49, and then finally there's 204 months left on the house or the primary residence, and that didn't get paid off. If had it gotten paid off, it would have had the month it got paid off in, the number of months into the system, the month and year, and then whatever the last balance was that the system paid off. So additional amounts, again, these are the same numbers you see down below, but they're categorized here so they're easy to see and easy to explain. $12 additional, 101 in overpayment, 137 a month is what they were paying for premiums for their insurance policy that was replaced, and then all total contributions of $200. Add those up and it's again $450 annually. That's $5,400. Next is the sources of funds for restructuring. So we had $30,000 available in the 1035 exchange, but we only used 8,020. I'm not going to go through all these. They're self-explanatory. Here's where the taxes show up and penalties if there are any. And these again are the same numbers you should have over on the assets page. All total we used 1820, and then the 8,020, this is put into the first year premium first year cash values. So even though it shows 1820 here, if you take out that 820, it leaves you 10, and that's how we paid the premiums. And so that was, again, that's up here at the top with the amount that was liquidated, okay? So that gives you the assets. Next, we have the cash flow. So we start out 415 April 2015, and we show you the cash values. These are the cash values that will correspond to the policy section. Now there may be, because there's loans and stuff, there's it'll tell you what's available. These are the numbers that year by year we show the breakdown of how we got those numbers, and then how much was used. Had everything been paid off, we may not have reduced debt. It may have been zero because everything was paid off. Then we show how much money is redirected back into the policies. At the end, there's roughly $29,412 is being paid back in every year, and that shows us. Then we see the balance. I just added in a zero so we know where we're starting. So the outstanding balance was $311. We did have a $46.90 for a policy loan that was existing that started us at $316,596. Every year you see this number decreasing till finally it's down to $24,178, and we have the policy balance is increasing. Now there is a tipping point where finally, and it's probably going to be in year 9 when you pay off the house, then this number starts decreasing, and then of course all the overall balance will then decrease until finally you have all of that paid off, unless you take out another loan for a new car or you put a kid into college or whatever it is you're doing. Next, the first things first. One of the nice things about this system is that we use your client's information and we tell them step by step. The first thing is, once the policy is approved, you as the agent will need to go to create the policy manager account. That will send them a link. They'll click on that. They'll create their username and password, and then they can put in their own policies and create any loans and loan documents if we have those associated with the carrier. Then if they're going to liquidate something, they need to put that in motion, because that may take a few weeks. And we tell them, here's what you've said you wanted to liquidate. All total, there was nothing available for debt reduction, but you needed to set aside $28.13 for taxes, and the $806 they probably never saw, because usually companies keep that as part of the penalty for liquidating some of those to begin with. Next, they go to their policy manager and they add the policy, put in the new policy, the start date, all the premiums, and 10 years of cash values from the illustration that we recommend you upload into the uploaded documents for them, so they have that available. And they're going to create a loan. Usually it's for the maximum amount available. Step 5, pay off or pay down the following debts. And so we tell them what debts there are. In this case, the first one you're going to pay off is the Visa, and it's approximately $7,500. Now they could have added something to it. They could have paid some additional against it, but it's essentially, the system says it's going to be roughly $7,500. That's going to redirect $184 back into the policy. That you're going to have roughly $82.55 on the Kia Soul. Pay that off, and that gives you $322. You total these up, and it's $506. Now that gets added to the assets above, or the additional funds, and then you're left with $27.64 that you're going to apply towards the student loan and do that accelerated process. The last step is to make sure that the policy loan repayments get paid back to the insurance company, and we recovered $506 by paying off the above debts, again clearly delineated. The policy manager account creates a policy loan repayment notification. The system will notify them, depending on which one they pick, by email or by text message. It's a single click of a link that will take them in, and then they can say whether that payment was made or not. But it's $506. We add the additional funds of $450, so we start with roughly $956 monthly, as illustrated in the amortization section. So when you go into the repayment, they're going to want to put in $956 as the amount that they're going to put back into the policy to repay the loan that we walked them through taking that out to start with. Next, as you've gone through this, they sign it saying that they've read it, they understand it, and that they've acknowledged it. You sign it saying that you took them through this to help them read and understand and acknowledge. That's the game plan. Next is a section for disclosures. First, if you're licensed as Series 6 or 7, this section won't show up. But if you're not, here it is. And then it just says, again, what I've reiterated before, if you're not Series 6 and 7 licensed, I can't give you advice. That has to, you may want to take that to your CPA or your financial planner or whoever it is and get advice on it and go from there. Next, disclosure is this is not a bank. We found out that an insurance company has gotten in trouble because someone came back and they said, my agent didn't tell me I wasn't, they kept talking about a bank and I don't have a bank. This is not a bank. It's a life insurance policy that gives you a pool of money in a paid up additions rider. Now, if you borrow money from the insurance company, it's a lien against the prepaid death benefits. And so there's going to be interest. So we want to disclose that there's going to be a charge for the use of funds from your policy. And so that's all in here again, read, understood, and acknowledged, signed, and dated. You give them a copy, you keep a copy, and everyone's protected, including the insurance companies. Now, we have the disclaimer here about, this is only as good as the third parties and your client gives you that information. If they don't give you full disclosure of all the deaths or the levels of deaths or assets or whatever, this can only be as accurate as the information given to us to you using this system from that information. So we don't know how accurate any of that is, and it's based on third-party information. So we make sure there's a disclaimer about the accuracy of it, and it's only as good as the data that gets put in. So that's the analysis. I know I've taken a long time to go through that, but understanding it, playing with it, running the numbers, reset calculations, changing numbers in amounts of assets being used, the size of policies, all of that is part of being able to understand and use the analysis to its full power. So at this point, I'm going to stop the recording